All marketers are liars. The Power of Telling Authentic Stories in a Low-Trust World by Seth Godin. Picture yourself at an upscale restaurant. The lighting is soft and intimate. There's a quiet murmur of conversation all around, and the sommelier glides up to your table carrying 2 wine glasses. One is just an ordinary glass, the kind sitting in your cabinet right now. The other? It's this stunning piece of crystal art with a delicate stem that practically screams luxury. He pours the exact same wine from the exact same bottle into both glasses, then invites you and some of the world's most respected wine experts to taste each one. Almost everyone agrees without hesitation. The wine from that gorgeous crystal glass tastes dramatically better, richer, more layered, more vibrant. The glassmaker, Georg Riedel, built a fortune worth millions on this single idea, that the shape of your glass actually transforms how wine tastes. And the experts back him up completely. Robert Parker, basically the godfather of wine criticism, raved that these glasses make such a profound difference. He couldn't possibly overstate their impact. But here's where it gets interesting. When scientists run the same experiment under strict double-blind conditions, where nobody knows which glass they're drinking from, the effect completely disappears. There's literally zero measurable difference between the wine from the cheap glass and the expensive one. So what's actually happening here? Some kind of collective hallucination? Not quite. It's something much more fascinating. It's a story. The story Georg Riedel spins about generations of master craftsmen, about the science of aroma, about honoring the wine itself, is so captivating that it actually rewires our perception of reality. Because we believe the wine should taste better, it genuinely does taste better to us. This single insight is the hidden engine, powering nearly everything around us. And it's at the core of a game-changing book by one of the sharpest marketing minds alive, Seth Godin. The book is called All Marketers Are Liars. Though, as you're about to discover, even that provocative title is itself part of a brilliant story. Godin has sold millions of books and shaped how an entire generation of leaders thinks, not by teaching manipulation tactics, but by uncovering a fundamental truth about how humans actually work. He's the rare kind of thinker who doesn't just hand you directions. He transforms how you see the entire journey. Today I'm going to walk you through the profound insight at the heart of his work. This isn't just some business strategy or sales technique. This is about how ideas spread through culture, how trust gets built in a skeptical world, and how we make sense of the chaos around us. Here's my promise. By the time we're done, you'll understand the single most powerful force driving almost every decision you and everyone you know makes every single day. And you'll see how the most successful people and organizations on the planet use this force not to manipulate people, but to forge genuine connections and deliver real value in a world starving for authenticity. Because here's the truth. We don't actually buy products. We buy the stories wrapped around them. And the story you tell, that's everything. Let's start with something that might make you squirm a little. You're a liar. So am I, by the way. Before you get defensive, I'm not saying we're malicious deceivers. We're not deliberately spreading harmful falsehoods. But we do tell ourselves stories constantly, every single day, to make sense of an overwhelmingly complex world. These stories are mental shortcuts. They're small untruths we embrace because they help us navigate reality. You tell yourself the organic apple costs more because it's healthier, and that narrative makes you feel virtuous about your purchase. You tell yourself those particular sneakers will make you look confident and stylish, and you get a little rush buying them. You tell yourself your preferred political candidate truly understands your values, and that story cements your loyalty. The actual facts? Often secondary at best. Facts are messy, contradictory, and exhausting to sort through. The story is what really matters. It's what makes us feel secure, intelligent, or special. This brings us to Seth Godin's central revelation. He argues that marketing, in its essence, isn't about advertising campaigns or product features or competitive advantages. Marketing is fundamentally the art of telling stories that resonate with people. Successful marketers aren't con artists. They're simply providers of narratives that we, the consumers, actively choose to believe. This wasn't always so critical. Way back when, companies made things people genuinely needed. If you were a blacksmith, you sold horseshoes to people whose horses needed shoes. If you were a farmer, you sold grain to hungry people. Your job was straightforward: make a quality product at a reasonable price. But today, most of us in developed countries have everything we actually need. We've got food, shelter, clothing covered. So what's left to purchase? We buy things we want. And wants aren't rational calculations. Wants are emotional experiences. We buy what we want because of how it makes us feel. This represents a seismic shift. Godin illustrates this with what he calls the new power curve. In the old economy, the most valuable part of any business was production, making things efficiently and well. Today, production has become commoditized. Pretty much anyone can get a t-shirt, a computer chip, or bottled water manufactured cheaply somewhere on the planet. The real value has migrated to the edges of the curve, to invention creating something worth talking about, and to storytelling crafting a compelling narrative about what you've created. The actual making part in the middle? That's not the challenge anymore. The story is where the real challenge lives. The story is where the value hides. So if our job is telling stories, how do we do it effectively? It's not as simple as just making something up. Godin lays out a 5-step framework that every successful story follows. The first and most critical step is this: their worldview was already there before you showed up. What does that mean exactly? It means every single person you'll ever encounter already carries a complete set of beliefs, biases, and assumptions about how the world works. This is their worldview. It's the lens they use to interpret everything they experience. Someone's worldview gets shaped by their parents, their hometown, their education, their accumulated experiences. A person who believes, "New technology makes my life better," will approach a new smartphone completely differently than someone who believes, "Technology just complicates things unnecessarily." Someone whose worldview says, "I deserve the finest things," will listen attentively to a story about luxury cars, while someone whose worldview whispers, "I need to watch my spending carefully," will tune it out completely. Here's the lesson that changes everything. You cannot change someone's worldview. You don't have enough time, resources, or influence. Trying to convince a hardcore skeptic that your healing crystals work is a battle you've already lost. Trying to sell a massive gas-guzzling SUV to a devoted environmentalist is just wasting everyone's time. Their worldview arrived first. So what's your move? You don't fight it. Instead, Godin suggests your job is finding a group of people who already share a worldview that's naturally receptive to your story. Then you frame your story in a way that slides perfectly into that existing worldview. A frame is the context you wrap around your story. It's the specific words, images, and feelings you use to hook your idea onto beliefs they already hold. For example, granola carried a worldview for years as healthy, back-to-nature food, something you'd eat on a mountain trail. The fact that most granola is loaded with sugar and fat didn't matter at all. The marketers who succeeded didn't fight against the health narrative. They framed their products to fit right into it. The smartest marketers hunt for neglected worldviews. They seek out groups of people who are being ignored by everyone else, and they tell a story specifically for them. Think about Tom's of Maine toothpaste. When they launched, the toothpaste market was completely dominated by giants like Crest and Colgate, whose stories focused on fighting cavities and whitening teeth. Tom's told a completely different story about natural ingredients, responsible manufacturing practices, and environmental stewardship. They didn't even try to sell it in regular supermarket aisles. They sold it in health food stores to a small community of people whose worldview already valued those principles. That small group believed the story so deeply they started telling their friends. The story spread from the health-conscious crowd to their neighbors, and eventually Tom's of Maine became wildly successful, crossing over into the mainstream. They didn't create that worldview from scratch. They found it already existing, and they honored it with their story. That's step one. Once you've framed your story for the right worldview, you face the next challenge, getting noticed. Think about how a frog's brain works for a second. A frog has this tiny brain, yet it can snatch a fly out of midair with incredible precision, something most humans couldn't do. How does it pull this off? The secret is that a frog's brain is hardwired to do one specific thing brilliantly. It ignores everything standing still and only registers things that move. A frog will literally starve to death surrounded by dead flies because it physically cannot see them. Our brains work remarkably similarly, just more complexly. We're constantly scanning our environment, and we're programmed to filter out the familiar while noticing what's new, different, or changed. You can walk past the same painting in your hallway 100 times without really seeing it, but if someone shifts it 6 inches to the left, you'll spot it immediately. This is why playing it safe is actually risky, and why boring is effectively invisible. In a marketplace screaming for our attention, creating a product that's just slightly better or marginally cheaper is like being a dead fly. Nobody will notice. To capture attention, you must be remarkable. You need to create enough of a change in the landscape that people are forced to look. But the instant we notice something new, our brain immediately shifts into another mode. It starts making assumptions. It tries constructing a story to explain what it's seeing. This leads to step 3, first impressions launch the story. And when Godin says first, he means lightning fast. We make incredibly sophisticated judgments in fractions of a second. Malcolm Gladwell wrote an entire book about this phenomenon, called Blink. We decide whether we trust a salesperson, enjoy a new song, or might sue a doctor for malpractice based on tiny slivers of information processed almost instantaneously. You walk into a store and before anyone even speaks to you, you've already formed a powerful and lasting opinion based on the lighting, music, scent, and how products are displayed. Once that snap judgment forms, we become remarkably resistant to changing it. We'll bend over backwards, finding evidence supporting our initial conclusion, while ignoring anything contradicting it. This is cognitive dissonance at work. We hate holding conflicting ideas simultaneously, so once we decide we like something, we filter reality to prove ourselves right. This is why authenticity matters so profoundly. The big misconception about first impressions is thinking you control when they happen. You absolutely don't. You might spend a fortune on a Super Bowl commercial, but a customer's first impression might come from a rude employee at your call center, a typo on your website, or how your delivery truck is parked. You never know which tiny detail will trigger the story in someone's head. So what's the solution? You have to be authentic. You need to live your story from the inside out. If your story promises friendly service, you must hire genuinely friendly people. If your story centers on elegant design, absolutely everything you produce, from products to invoices, must radiate elegant design. When all the details align, your story becomes coherent and believable regardless of where a customer first encounters it. This brings us to the heart of everything, the story itself. This is step 4. Great marketers tell stories we believe. A great story isn't a bullet list of specifications. In fact, Godin insists, don't just recite facts at me, tell me a story instead. A great story works because it makes a promise. It promises a shortcut, a solution, social success, safety, or pure enjoyment. It taps into our deepest desires and fears. Consider the Porsche Cayenne. For around $80,000, you can buy this luxury SUV. Or for about $36,000, you can buy a Volkswagen Touareg. Here's the kicker. They're essentially the same vehicle, built in the same factory. The facts are irrelevant to buyers. Nobody needs a Porsche Cayenne. They want one. They want the story it tells about success, power, and prestige. When you buy the Cayenne, you're not purchasing metal and leather. You're buying a feeling, a narrative you tell yourself and others about who you are. And that narrative feels incredible. This is where Godin makes a crucial distinction that forms the moral backbone of the entire book. He separates stories into 2 categories, fibs and frauds. A fib is a story that, when a consumer believes it, actually makes the product or experience better for them. Our wine glass example is a perfect fib. The story Georg Riedel tells genuinely makes the wine taste better to believers. The narrative becomes a self-fulfilling truth. When a doctor gives a patient a placebo, just a sugar pill, and tells them it's a powerful medication, patients often actually improve. The story the doctor told triggered real, measurable healing responses. The story enhanced the outcome. Honest storytellers, or fibbers, create genuine value through their narratives. A fraud, on the other hand, is a story told purely for the marketer's selfish benefit. A fraud is a narrative with harmful side effects, and when a fraud gets exposed, consumers don't just feel disappointed, they feel rage. They feel violated. Godin gives the devastating example of Nestlé marketing baby formula in developing countries decades ago. They told a story framed around many new mothers, worldview, Western technology is superior and more modern for your baby. This narrative encouraged mothers to abandon breastfeeding in favor of Nestlé's powdered formula. But the story didn't improve the product, it made it dangerous. In areas with contaminated water supplies, the formula mixed with unsafe water made babies sick. Families who couldn't afford enough powder would dilute it, causing malnutrition. The story was a fraud. It served corporate profits while causing tremendous harm. This leads us to the final and most important step in Godin's framework. Step 5. Marketers with authenticity thrive. In a world connected by the internet, frauds get exposed, and they get exposed fast. A deceptive story can't survive the scrutiny of millions of interconnected people sharing information. If you promise one thing but deliver another, the entire world will know about it before sunrise. The only sustainable strategy, the only approach that builds lasting trust and loyalty, is being authentic. Being authentic means you actually live the story you're telling. It means you believe the narrative yourself. The people at Nike aren't just selling athletic shoes. They're genuinely obsessed with performance and athleticism. The designers at Apple aren't merely making computers. They're on a genuine mission to build tools that are beautiful and intuitive. Their stories work because they're authentic, not factually perfect in every detail, but true in their intention, consistency, and passion. When you're authentic, every single detail aligns naturally. Your story isn't just a slogan slapped onto a product. It is the product. It is the service. It is the entire experience. Consider Kiehl's, the cosmetics company. Walking into one of their original stores was an experience unlike anything else. There was literally a motorcycle parked in the middle of the floor. The staff possessed encyclopedic knowledge. The labels were packed with detailed information, and they gave out generous free samples. The entire environment told a story about a unique, passionate individual who cared deeply about their craft, not some faceless corporate entity. Customers fell in love with that narrative. The story they told themselves, that this is genuine, artisanal product made by someone who truly cares, made them feel special. And that story proved so powerful, the business thrived for years, even after being quietly acquired by the massive corporation L'Oréal. The story was authentic enough to survive corporate ownership. Ultimately, Godin's message carries both a warning and an incredible opportunity. The power to tell stories is the most potent force for change we possess. But with that power comes serious responsibility. You can use it to create frauds that exploit people's fears and desires for quick profits. Or you can use it to tell authentic stories that genuinely connect with people, enhance their experiences, and spread ideas that actually matter. The choice belongs to us. And in the end, it's pretty straightforward. All marketers are storytellers. But only the losers are liars. As we step back and look at the complete picture Seth Godin has painted, it's natural to feel slightly unsettled. The idea that we're all storytellers operating on narratives rather than pure logic can be uncomfortable, but I actually find it incredibly freeing. It releases us from the trap of thinking success only comes from having more data. lower prices, or louder advertising. It gives us permission to be artists, not just efficient operators. The most transformative lesson in this book, from my perspective, is the profound importance of empathy. Before you can tell a story that works, you must first have the humility to genuinely understand your audience's worldview. You have to stop obsessing over what you want to say and start thinking deeply about what they're ready to hear. This represents a radical departure from traditional, self-centered marketing approaches. It forces you to listen first, to observe carefully, to connect on a human level before you ever attempt to persuade. In today's world, which Godin accurately identified as a, quote, low-trust world, this insight matters more than ever. We're absolutely bombarded with information and noise, so our natural defense mechanism is deep skepticism about everything. We don't trust institutions, we don't trust advertisements, and we often don't trust people we haven't personally vetted. So how does any idea actually break through? It breaks through when it's carried by a story that feels authentic, told by someone we believe in, and aligned with truths we already hold deep inside. Authenticity isn't a clever tactic. It's genuinely the only strategy that still works. So how can we actually apply these powerful ideas in our own lives? Starting right now, here are a few concrete actions you can take today. First, the next time you need to persuade someone of anything, whether it's a potential employer during an interview, a teacher about a project idea, or even a friend about which movie to watch, pause and ask yourself, what's their worldview? What do they already believe about this situation? Instead of leading with your facts and your agenda, try framing your idea in a way that honors their perspective first. You'll be genuinely amazed at how much more receptive people become when they feel truly seen and understood. Second, look at something you're currently working on, whether it's a project, a personal brand, or a small business concept, and ask yourself, what's the real story I'm telling here? Not the features or specifications, but the emotional promise underneath. Is it a story about safety, adventure, belonging? Clarify that story until it becomes simple, compelling, and true. Then examine every single detail of what you're doing. Does your website tell that story? Does your email signature tell that story? Does the way you answer the phone tell that story? Make it consistent. Make it authentic. Finally, embrace the idea of being a fibber in the most positive sense. A fibber is someone whose story genuinely adds value to the world. Ask yourself, does the story I'm telling make the experience better for people who believe it? Does it give them more confidence, joy, or satisfaction? If the answer is yes, you're not just marketing. You're genuinely making things better. You're using your story to create a better reality. That was our journey through All Marketers Are Liars by Seth Godin. We've explored the core concepts today, but I'll be honest, a summary can only scratch the surface. The real power of a book like this comes alive when you read it yourself. It's in those quiet moments when one of Godin's simple, powerful examples connects with a challenge you're facing in a way you never expected. This summary is your map, designed to help you see the landscape and decide if this journey is right for you. If anything we've discussed today has sparked a new idea or shifted your perspective even slightly, I really encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning. It's an experience that can genuinely transform how you communicate, connect, and see the world. You can find a link to the book in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable and it gave you something worth thinking about, please show your support by hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next deep dive into another transformative book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Let's keep learning and growing together.